Happy Tuesday. It's time for AIR Radio. And Jennifer Hillman will be back in just a few minutes with her guest.
Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Hellman, and this is Abstract Illusion Radio, where we explore and expose the different aspects of the human experience. Today's guest is James Robinson, who I've known probably since 2005, when I took a course in kind of unplugging my core and flushing it out. It was an interesting experience for sure. I met some amazing people on that adventure. James was one of those people, and I've kept in touch with him through that. He was a wonderful, supportive teacher and healer. His adventures, he has several books and a wonderful website, which I will ask him to talk about a little bit. But he's an amazing man to be in touch with, and he is really an interesting, diverse soul that went from rancher to attorney to healer and back again in many ways. Hello, James. How are you?
I'm doing great this morning. Good to be alive.
Yes.
The alternatives aren't so good.
I don't know. I've been on the other side. It's pretty sweet over there. Anyway, even in the 119-degree weather that we have here in Arizona, it is wonderful to know we've got this beautiful sun and beautiful weather down here. As hot as it is, it's wonderful to be alive. Now, you've had quite the existence. You were supposed to be on 2 weeks ago, and then there was an internet outage, and we didn't quite have you on, so obviously it wasn't quite the right time to have you on. So you were explaining a little bit about your journey, and then we're going to get into more fun and exciting, well, your life is exciting, but other things. So can you tell people a little bit about how you went from being up in the Montana area, a nice, successful attorney, and then suddenly said, I'm just not liking this?
Sure. Actually, it was the reverse. I grew up in a family in North Carolina that was a bunch of lawyers. I mean, my grandfather was a lawyer, my father was a lawyer, I have two brothers that are lawyers. And so that's kind of the family business. And so I was expected to go into the law if I wanted to be considered normal. And a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, not only from the practice of law itself, it just was, that's hard enough, but when you got two brothers and a father who are, whether it's intentionally or subconsciously you're competing with, it gets to be pretty stressful. And so I started looking for other things to occupy my mind, and I got into cattle ranching. I was a restaurant owner for a while. I did all sorts of things, and, it's, looking back on it now, it's kind of like I was having menopause when I hit about 30. But the result was that, I looked and I was looking around, and I was trying to be happy, I was trying to be successful, I was trying to impress my family. And one day I just woke up, and I was so stressed out that it was not healthy. And I asked myself a very important question, and that is, whose life is this anyway? And because everybody was telling me how to live my life, I was on my second wife, or in my second marriage would be a better way to say it. And that wasn't going well, mainly because I couldn't figure out how to keep her happy. And I was, finally, I just decided that I was just going to have to follow my heart. I was going to, something had to give. My mental processes weren't making me happy, so I decided that in 2004 I just had to stop and reboot and figure out what it is that Divine wanted me to do. And so I quit practicing law and went basically retreated out. And by the way, that was fun because I had to go walk into my father's office, who was my senior partner, and tell him I was quitting, and he didn't take that very well. In fact, all of them are still in denial that I haven't, I must have lost my mind and blew a cork somewhere. But then I went into alternative healing because I felt this really strong urge to help people. And so that's where I started taking alternative healing courses, and that's when I met you, Jennifer. Was basically when I was with my teacher, Stark Fuentes, and she, I lived with her for 2 years. And I learned an awful lot from her, and basically got to the point where she said that I had learned all I could learn from her. And so I started out on my own, and had a international global healing practice. I went to Hong Kong a lot. I went to Israel a lot. I went all over Europe and the UK and United States and Canada, South America, and was having a really wonderful time doing all of this. But quite frankly, although I was considered to be an expert, I mean, I've been on national TV, I've been on worldwide radio shows, not as popular as this one, of course, but the Mitch Albom show and some other things where people were asking me questions about alternative healing, and I've written articles for medical journals. So I managed to fool enough people to think that I knew what I was talking about. And so I was for the last from about 2007 to 2010, I studied with an Irish teacher who comes to the United States every now and then, named Derek O'Neill, and he taught me a lot about Buddhism and how, Buddhist philosophy and how they deal with life. And I got a lot of useful tools from that. And then I met a fellow from India named Mahendra Trivedi, who is a teacher here in the United States and has followers, huge following in India. He's not that well known here. He's been here for about 2 years. And I've been with him for the last 2 years. But funnily enough, I guess it's humorous in a way. I'm now a legal consultant, and I own a beef company, a beef production company. We raise grass-fed, graded beef, which is probably one of the most unique products on the planet. And also going into other things. So my world is expanding pretty quickly now. And it's, although I keep coming back to every day I wake up, am I happy? And now for the last few years, I can honestly say, yes, I'm absolutely, positively happy. And that's the most important thing there is to me. The money doesn't matter. The work doesn't matter. Nothing matters except the fact that I feel happy 99.9% of the time. So it's not a happiness that is pleasure. There's a difference between pleasure and happiness, and that happiness is kind of that feeling that everything is okay. Happiness is the feeling that, even though life is happening and it's not going the way you want it to go, and, everybody's trying to shoot bullets at you, that's all normal everyday life. But happiness is knowing that no matter what's going on, everything's going to be okay. And so I finally reached that point, and that's what I've been teaching people, talking to people about, along with my business pursuits, where I'm trying to bring spirituality into the corporate marketplace. And one thing that I have to say, that it is an uphill battle. Unfortunately, or I guess it's just the way it is that the way the world is now is that I would say at least 95% of the population, whether or not they say they're spiritual, they don't behave that way. And so it's very difficult to find people that are honest. They're very difficult to find people that have integrity, and they're, quite frankly, it's very hard to find people who aren't lazy and trying to get by with the least possible effort. So there used to be a saying in my church when I was a Christian that, you know, how much sin can I get away with and still get into heaven? And that's kind of what the mindset is. I see in many cultures is that, you know, I don't want to work, I want to get paid a lot, and, you know, don't want to take responsibility. So
amen to that. I agree with that.
It's very, yeah. And so no matter who you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with somebody that's trying to sell you something, or somebody you're trying to sell something to, or somebody you're trying to work a deal with, it's just, you know, I will say that all of these years of study and meditation and contemplation and growth, it only has got me to the place where I'm doing a little bit better at figuring out who's a valuable person to do business with and who's just trying to take your money. And, you know, who's legitimate, who has integrity, and who doesn't.
Right.
And, you know, that's a lot, you know, that says a lot. And I think that's exactly why our culture is the way that it is. Of course, there are always shining lights that I come across, and there are quite a few, but the thing is, mainstream culture doesn't care about integrity. They don't care about their relationship with the divine creator. They're just trying to survive. And whether it's superficial, how do I look, or how much is in my bank account, or whatever, it's, you know, it's I guess it's indicative or evidence of the fact that one of the things that I feel the shift is all about. Everybody was talking about the shift, you know, in 2012 and everything else and leading up to it. You know, personally, I think that the shift is how we behave. It's not so much, you know, whether we can manifest or turn lead into gold, or whether we can do magical tricks, or whether we can heal somebody, or whether we can materialize something out of thin air. It's all about whether or not we act with integrity and take responsibility for our actions, you know. And I think that most people who have been the victim of, or I guess the perpetrator of fraud, know what I'm talking about. And so it's whether or not, you know, when you walk into a business and you walk into a corporation, you know, one of the things that is very crucial is how do you feel when you walk in there. And people who meditate a lot and have been following the spiritual path, one of the benefits of doing that, I mean, I get asked this question all the time: why should I meditate, or why should I care, and why should I do all this nonsense? And the answer is because you become more connected with your divine guidance. You become more intuitive. You know, you show up, you know, this synchronicity starts to show up. You're in the right place at the right time. But most part is that you can feel whether or not this is the right place for you or not. And so one of the things I've been very fortunate for the last couple of years, after all these years of work, is that I've met people who work hard and are honest and tell you the truth. And so that has made a huge difference in the way I feel about things. And, you know, you can imagine what being a lawyer's like. I'm still in that world because I still deal with lawyers. I still deal with adversaries. I still deal with judges. The difference I find now compared to what it was like when I did it before is that I have a center. You know, I have a grounded perspective of things, in that, number one, that it's all on one level, even though it's very important and there are dollars involved, it's all about setting an example. And I don't have to sink to their level. And so one of the things people want, we deal with a lot of spiritual people, quote unquote people, and alternative healers, and people who are just sick and want to feel better. And one of the things that is obvious to me is that most of these people would totally transform their life if they would just put into their life some effort. In other words, to do the best job you can and tell the truth to others and yourself. Because I see, the thing I find that is the most damaging habit that a lot of people have is that they lie to themselves. And that just, of course, if you're lying to yourself, you're going to lie to other people. And the thing is that the one way you can tell whether or not people lie to themselves is ask them how they're doing. Because if you ask that question, 99.9% of the population is going to say, oh, great. Why they've just been diagnosed with liver cancer. And they don't want to tell anybody that they aren't great, because they don't want to feel weak, they don't want to feel judged, or whatever the motivation is the thing is that, you can say stuff like, well, I'm not that healthy right now, but I'm getting better. That'd be a nice way to answer. That's an honest way of saying that without saying a lie. And people, I think, don't really understand that this is something that has been conditioned into us from early childhood, mainly because we didn't want to cause problems in the home. If your parents said, how do you feel? And you said, I don't feel so good, then usually there's a reaction to that, either positive or negative. And depending on how your parents and your family reacted to that, is you formed a habit. And if you were told to suck it up, like I was, then you learn to deny the fact that you may not be feeling so good. But it's a chronic problem that it's not so much, there's a lot of stuff out there now, self-help books and everything says that, you've got to say your mantras, you've got to say, you've got to visualize this, you've got to visualize that, you've got to, watch what you think, you've got to watch what you say. And because that manifests your reality. Well, I think it's far more important to tell the truth.
Well, it makes a huge difference also by telling the truth, you're taking responsibility for your words, don't you think?
Sure. And the thing is that you are admitting to who your humanness. And because nobody wants to admit that we're human.
Right.
We have up days, down days, where some days we get freaked out, some days we get scared. How many people have you ever heard answer the question, how are you? They'll say, I'm afraid of the future. Nobody says that. And even though their bank account's down to minus and their creditors are calling, and they've just been laid off, or their child is sick or whatever, it's a little thing, but when you say the truth, like, I'm not feeling so good right now, but I'm getting better.
Right.
that makes a huge difference in, number one, your credibility. Quite frankly, if I ask somebody how they're doing and they go, oh, good, good, great, great, and I'm just sitting there going, yeah, right, I believe that. And because I know intuitively that they're not doing so good, because they're, basically when people get stressed, they send off all kinds of signals that they're stressed, and people, if you're paying attention, you can pick up on that. And so it's important for people to admit that, maybe I'm not on my best form today, but that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It's just sometimes we're allowed to feel bad. We're allowed to get angry. We're allowed to have emotions.
Right.
And, without being dramatic about it. There is a line that you have to draw where you're telling the truth and then you're telling your story. And what I mean by your story is a long tirade about why you should feel sorry for me. And that's very disempowering. That is something that actually people will run away from you screaming when you start into the long list of why you feel bad. You don't have to say why you feel bad. You just have to say, well, I'm not doing so well, but I'm doing a lot better. And so it's and now if somebody wants to hear about it, then that's the open door. You can walk through it. But the other person says, well, I'm hoping you're feeling better. Thank you. Go on with your business. It's not a time, but a lot of people get into the storytelling to be dramatic. And so, that's not telling the truth. Being dramatic is just simply telling a story to get attention. And as we know from our teachings that we went in the seminar we went through, and just what I've learned in life in general, one of the biggest problems people have in life is seeking negative attention. And what that means is that that's the only way they could get their parents' attention. And so instead of being good little girls and boys get a pat on the head every now and then, but they don't get a lot of attention. People assume that they're doing good when they're behaving. And that's usually pretty far from the truth, because every boy and girl has questions about what's going in life and why do people act the way they do, and why do mommy and daddy act the way they do, and where do I fit in all of this. But really the problem is that children learn at a very early age, probably about, when they start crying, the minute they come out of the womb, that they get attention when they start making noise and misbehaving. And that is something that carries on into adult life. And people do it and they don't even know that they're doing it, because they're creating a lot of drama to get attention. And I'll give you a perfect example. Just yesterday, somebody walked up to me and said, "What's wrong with your hair?" And I just looked at him and I said, "It's the same hair I've had on my head for 60 years. What do you mean, what's wrong with it? And he said, "Well, there's something wrong with it." I said, "What? Be specific." And they said, "Well, it's, I don't like the way you're combing it." And I went, "Oh, okay. So there's really nothing wrong with my hair. It's something's wrong with you."
No kidding.
But the whole thing was just his way of getting negative attention. So rather than just saying, I don't like the way he combs his hair, and and not even bringing up the subject, one of the best lessons I ever had in my life is that I was in Ireland at I guess I call it an ashram. It's a healing center that my Irish teacher has, and we were sitting there eating lunch, and the one of the staff, who I love very much, she's a wonderful Irish woman, and she for a while there, she was on what I called a lettuce and cardboard diet, because she would always eat, the only thing she would eat is lettuce and some kind of a wafer that looked just like cardboard. And I was just joking around with her, and I said, "Oh, you eating cardboard today?" And she looked at me and said, "Focus on your own path." And it stunned me, because it's like, that is probably the biggest lesson I have ever learned. And it's so important that I have that tattooed on my forearm. Focus on my own path. And so whenever I see somebody that, maybe their body shape, or they've got purple lipstick on, or they've dyed their hair a certain color, and it's, and it causes me to go, well, that's different. And the minute I start thinking, what, do I like that or I do not like that, that's all about judgment. And if I am so stupid as to open my mouth and make a comment about that, that's really when I'm getting into seeking negative attention, because it's none of my business what anybody else is doing. And unless they're causing a negative result in my life, and we have to talk about that. But as far as how anybody looks or acts or says, it's one of the most important things, behavioral lessons in life, is mind your own darn business. Focus on yourself.
That's what Byron Katie is all about in the work. It's like, whatever you are projecting on someone else, turn it around and see how it is actually you that has the issue, not them. And it's an interesting tool to switch it around. Whatever you're projecting out, turn it around on yourself and start working on yourself, and not make them the issue when the issue is with you.
Oh, exactly. I think that Byron Katie, there are a lot of very famous teachers and writers that have focused on this, and it's one of the basic tenets of Buddhism, is that what you perceive is what you project. And so if you're noticing something, it's because you are seeing something that you don't like about yourself. And, you can get pretty deep with this, but, just keeping it on this level, it's basically, why are you opening your mouth? Why am I open? Why did he open his mouth and say, "I don't like your hair"? That is something that is at the root of it. It's just he wanted attention. And so You just have to look at it and say, "Oh, go on," and mind your own business. And it's the most politically correct way I know of saying that is the way I've got it on my arm, and that is focus on your own path.
Right.
Because I think that is one of the biggest problems in corporate America today, and business in general, is that everybody is comparing themselves to others. And I think one of the surest ways to become miserable, one of the fastest ways, I should say, to become miserable is to compare yourself to others. And it's something that's drummed into us, again, from the day we're born. We're either compared to our siblings, or we're compared to our friends, or we're compared to our classmates, or we're compared to our coworkers. This whole thing about climbing the corporate ladder is all about comparison. You have to do it better than the people around you. So what are you doing? You're looking to see what everybody else is doing. And you're not focusing on yourself and what you're doing and what your output is, and not really caring what anybody else is doing, because I think that most employers will tell you, if they're being honest, that they would much rather have an employee that is efficient and productive than someone who is popular and social. somebody
Right.
that knows everybody else's business. And
Right.
so it's like if you want to get ahead in the world, don't worry about what anybody else is thinking or saying or doing. Because if you focus on yourself and do your job with as much integrity and responsibility as you can possibly put into it, you will go far. Where I see companies failing and customers running away is because people don't care. They don't
Right.
care about the customer. They don't care about their company. They don't care about their employer, and they sure don't care about how good of a job they're doing. They just want to be paid. I think that most economists would agree, and I'm going to say something very controversial here, but that's okay, get over it. And I think that unions were the worst thing that ever happened to this country. And I know a lot of people will debate that with me and probably come to blows, but the reality of it is that unions protect the lowest common denominator. And so it doesn't encourage the best possible performance. Mm-mm. So, I'm not saying that union is the only reason this is. I think it's a part of human nature to be lazy. But when we talk about the shift, I'm hoping, praying to God, that part of the shift is shifting people's behavior from being lazy and lethargic and wanting something for nothing to taking responsibility for their actions and doing the best job they can under the circumstances. And also becoming more conscious. Now, let me say a word about being conscious, because that word is misused a lot in the spiritual community. All consciousness is alertness and awareness. It is being aware of what's going on around you. And how do you become conscious? You get out of your ego. Because your ego is part of your mind that takes control of everything. And it's all about it's always looking at your life and saying, what's wrong with it? Or how can I improve it? It may be great, but how can I make it better? And when you're focused on that all the time, you're not paying attention to what is going on around you. I kind of compare the mind to an automobile. And on many levels, we're sitting in this automobile. If you think of your higher self, what the spiritual people call your upper mind, your super consciousness, your higher mind, your divinity, we're sitting in this vehicle, which if you're talking about an automobile, you can visualize, you can understand that. It's a little harder to understand it, but it's the same concept when you're sitting in your mind, because spiritual people like to talk about disconnecting and detaching from your thoughts. And what your mind is your thoughts. And so your mind will create all kinds of havoc because it wants to be in control. It's like imagine stepping into an automobile and it takes control. And no matter what you want to do, your car takes you to a certain place, wherever it wants to go. And it may not be where you want to go, but that's where this car is going to take you. And because the car has been programmed to take you there. And so you're stuck. You're in this car and you're going somewhere and you don't really know where you're going. And you might start getting to be a little concerned about where you're going because you don't know where you're going and you're not in control. The car is. Well, if you use the same analogy to your mind, that's exactly what's going on with about 99.9% of the population, is that their minds are in control and they don't even realize it. So, is that me?
James, hang on a second. Jennifer dropped her internet connection dropped, and I call her on the phone for you.
Okay.
Folks, the joys of running an internet radio station. You have no idea how much fun it is, right, James?
Oh, well, life is what happens when you have something else planned.
Pardon me, I had to put on.
But it's all fun. It's all fun.
That it is, my friend. That it is. If you can't make it fun, don't lose your temper.
You just can't make this stuff up. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Jennifer Hellman
Is not available.
Jen.
To leave a callback number, press 5.
Jen,
Do I
answer.
need to hang up?
No, hang on. Jen, answer your phone, will you please? Go ahead and talk, James.
Okay, am I still on?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep babbling while you get in touch with Jennifer. The thing I was saying is that if you apply this analogy of sitting in a car that's taking you somewhere that you may or may not want to go, that's exactly what's happening to our minds. And that is because people have low consciousness, and they have totally allowed their minds, their thoughts, to take control of their life. And that's not our original blueprint. That's not how we were originally designed to function, but because of the fact that we have been taught since birth, and probably programmed before birth, that our minds are the most important thing in our life.
Hi.
And hey, Jennifer.
Hey.
I was just I don't know where we lost you, but I was comparing the automobile metaphor to how we live our life. And what happens is that our minds are constantly trying to distract us from what it is that what we're doing, what we're actually saying and behaving and all this other kind of, because the mind wants to be in control. And by the mind, I mean our thoughts. And the interesting thing is another lie that people tell you is that, hey, you meditate, you're supposed to stop thinking. Well, that's impossible, because we have this thing called the mind, and the mind will not stop thinking. The mind can be calmed, the mind can be relaxed, the mind can be put into neutral, but it cannot stop thinking. The only time we stop thinking is when we die. So the truth is the way we want to be is to be able to put your mind in neutral, and that's what we call detaching from the mind. And if anybody doesn't understand what that concept is, just imagine yourself sitting there at your desk, and you've got a million things to do, and you're thinking about all this stuff. Just sit back and watch yourself, and then step back again and watch your thoughts. You can do it. It's not hard. I know it sounds strange, but basically you can see yourself. You can watch yourself thinking. And just imagine you are just like you are sitting in this automobile, you are sitting in this mind. And you are not, just like you're not the automobile, you are not the mind. And the importance of this is how you raise your consciousness. And because when you get to this place where you understand that all of these thoughts that are racing through your head, they're just thoughts. Fear is just a thought. I know a lot of people don't understand what's an emotion, what's a feeling, and what's a thought. I learned a while back that, who cares? Just call them all thoughts, because emotions cause thoughts or whatever, but emotions are caused by beliefs, which are mental constructs that are formed when either through life experiences or something we've been taught. And, it's kind of like this notion that if you're an A student, you're good, you're worthy, you have self-worth. If you're an D student or an F student, you're a failure, you're a loser, and you're doomed. So it's, and the fact is, those are just thoughts. They're just beliefs. But look at what a huge difference it makes whether you believe you have worth, you have self-value, or whether you're a loser. And either one of those are just a thought. And you can sit here as we're listening to this today, and just look at those two thoughts and go, do I have any emotional attachment to either one of those? And if you do, then you can start to understand why you behave the way you behave. And I don't want to get into a long philosophical, psychological discussion here, but the thing is, I'm trying to get across to people is that if you can just simply remember that you are in an automobile called the mind, and you have to take control of it. And the way you do that is simply take a few minutes, a couple of minutes every hour or so, and just relax and remember that you are in the driver's seat and you can tell that mind where to go. If you've ever watched any of these people who've had brain strokes and they've lost the function of the left side of their brain, they will tell you that the left side of the brain is where most of the anxiety and emotions and logic sits, and the right side of the brain is where your intuition is and your calmness and well-being. And the thing that is important about this is that when you understand that it is just simply your brain working, then you can start to control that, and you can start to master your brain. And when you've mastered your brain, then you become enlightened. And
okay, let me ask you a question then with that. Only because this is something that I tend to kind of bounce around with, is the fact that we are here as humans, and the one thing that distinguishes humans is their emotions. So if we're trying to calm our emotions, are we trying to detach from being human? You understand what I mean? That's what I always that's where I always kind of juggle my understanding of this.
Here's I think where the goal is for humankind, and this is something that I've experienced recently, and I can tell you it's really weird. But I think that we are here to experience emotions. It's kind of like an amusement park where we get to go on any ride we want to go on and enjoy the absolute heck out of it. And I'm reminded of, for those people who are old enough, there was this television show back in the 60s called Star Trek. And William Shatner, and it was a groundbreaking series for a number of reasons. It was the first one to have two people of different races kissing on the television. It had all these technological advances that NASA studied for a while. But most importantly, it had some storylines that were absolutely spiritually enlightened, if you go back and look at them. And one of them was a thing where they beamed down to this planet and all these misfortunes happen to them, and people get hurt, people get killed, and somebody's thinking of their past, and a tiger appears because they were frightened by a tiger at some point in their life, and the tiger eats them. Or Sulu thinks of a samurai, and a samurai appears, and he gets beat up by the samurai. And this goes on for several of the things. And at the end of the show, they're getting ready to destroy this planet because they think it's so dangerous. And all of a sudden, these three beings appeared, and they say, "You're going to have to leave." And and Kurt says, "What do you mean we got to leave?" And he says, "You've ruined it, and you're not mature enough to enjoy this amusement park." And they go, "What amusement park?" And they say, "What, are you stupid? This is the Galaxy Amusement Park, and planets reserve this, centuries ahead of time, so people can come and have the dreams of a lifetime. They can enjoy themselves. They can enjoy all their imagination can bring. And you idiots are sitting here thinking of all the worst case, you're having all of these nightmares, and it's not designed for that. It's designed to give you your best dreams. And so you've got to leave, and you can't come back until we tell you can come back. And so they get booted off the planet. And I really didn't understand it back in the 60s, but now I do understand it, and that is that show was a perfect illustration of the fact that we can have it any way we want it. We can experience any emotion that we want. That is God's gift to us. And we can experience all the, what we call the negative emotions, the lower vibratory emotions, or we can enjoy the other ones, or we can go back and forth, or we can be a perfect Buddhist monk and have none of that and just be right in the middle. Personally, I enjoy the roller coaster. I have, when I'm getting really angry, I get really angry, but it's only for a few minutes. And the thing is that what people do is they get attached to the emotion, and by that I mean if they get happy, they do everything they can to hold on to that happiness, without realizing that the only difference between happiness and misery is time. You will always be happy, and you will always eventually get to misery, and then you will always get back to happiness, and you will always get back to misery. What I think the equilibrium, that equanimity that the Buddhists talk about, is not being emotionless. It's being at a high state of emotion and being perfectly calm about it. It's being able to, and this is the experience I've had recently, and it shows that I'm on the right track, where I can be absolutely, totally, mentally excited and absolutely blissful and calm at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but people can. This is what I think the reason we're here on this planet is to achieve that. And the thing is that if you can understand, it's perfectly okay to feel bad emotionally. It's perfectly okay to be sick. It's perfectly okay to hate somebody. It's just be honest with it, and be honest with yourself. You hate somebody, and then just let it go. And when you can let it go and detach from it, just remember that all of this is the car driving you. This is what the Buddhists call the illusion, the Maya of the mind, creating a reality that we can either buy into or we don't have to buy into. We can either drive the car or let the car drive us. And I think a lot of people let the mind take control because they're just too lazy to do anything about it. Because it is a habit, and it is like all habits, it takes effort to change. And so, one of the things that I've been doing is to create a beef product that goes against everything we know about beef, because most people are very afraid of beef, and they have every right to be, because I've been in the beef business for 25 years now, and I can tell you that I wouldn't eat regular commodities beef, just the regular, and for God's sakes, anything that's ground up, if you didn't grind it yourself, you're taking your life in your hands. And the reason is that you don't know what these cows have eaten, and you don't know what chemicals and toxic things are put into these animals. And one of the biggest problems is that whatever fat is in there, fat is the repository for all these toxic chemicals. That's where it goes, because that's what fat is for. Fat takes the toxic chemicals out of your system and stores it so it doesn't kill you. And so that's why people get fat, because they're eating toxic stuff. And so the body creates this fat to protect itself. And So I've been involved in a company with my partner and spiritual teacher, Mahendra Trivedi, to create a beef product that has absolutely zero toxins in it. It's grass-fed and tastes as good or better than anything you can buy on the market. And what we've created is what's called a prime grade and choice grade grass-fed beef. And that means that what we've got is a product that tastes better, looks better, smells better, and is more digestible than any other kind of meat on the market. And we call it Trivedi beef, and it's something that, I've gotten calls from Grass-Fed Beef Association accusing us of lying about the fact that it's grass-fed, but anybody that wants to go to the place where these cows grew up and were fed, I welcome them to go and interrogate the people that fed them grass. I'm not the one that fed them. All I know is what I paid for. And I know that they wouldn't have been feeding them something and not charging me for it. So I know they only fed them grass. And so it's the most remarkable thing. People cannot believe it, mainly because it tastes so good. And I've had at least 10 people who were Bible-thumping vegans start eating this and say, we'll eat this. I'm not going to eat beef, but I'll eat this. And it's because there are no toxins in it. And you can tell by the fact that you can eat, there's an aftertaste with beef, and there's a feeling with regular commodities beef that's full of toxic junk. And people who eat it, they feel heavy, they feel bloated, they feel like their colon's impacted, and they have produces a lot of gas, and they just, after a while, they get very sleepy and that sort of thing. And it's really hard to eat, a lot of it. And what we found is that people can eat 2 to 3 pounds of this at a sitting, at a serving. They have absolutely no discomfort, no bloating, no gas. They digest it quickly, they pass it quickly, and they absorb a lot more of these nutrients because it's more. I mean, we don't have any science to prove this, but we're getting ready to do some studies on the beef to show that it's more bioavailable. But we do know that one thing that, children don't lie. And one of the things that we've seen is children absolutely love this stuff. And even children, everybody knows all the crystal children walking around that are vegetarians at age 6. Well, where'd they get and their parents aren't even vegetarians. Their parents are normal omnivores. And these kids say, no, this stuff is bad for me. Well, these kids are eating this beef. It's really remarkable because it's, they enjoy it. They want more of it. And so, and what this is we're bringing this energy, this spiritual energy into this corporation and being more, proactive with how we raise our beef. And so, it's amazing. There's only 2 employees in this company, and we've raised 1,200 cows. And it's like, that's just a part of my day. I do the legal consulting work. I do the beef business. I have an energy drink company. I have a concrete company. I do all of this, and, I'm just a normal guy. But the thing is that when you get to this place...
We have to wrap it up, James. Believe it or not, the hour is over.
Oh, my goodness. I don't think I took a breath.
and it was just so interesting. We just, let you go, and that's what an amazing person you are. So I just want to make sure you say, or tell everybody, what website you really want us to go to get more information about you and your product.
Yeah, well, I would send them to, if you want to know more about what I'm doing, go to TrivediEffect.com, TrivediEffect.com. And it'll open a world for you that you didn't know existed.
Excellent.
So, I appreciate it, Jennifer. It's great talking to you again. Yeah.
It's wonderful, and I thank you so much for being on. We definitely need to do this again if you're up to it.
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, I just was talking off the top of my head today. I mean, there's lots of stuff I'd like to talk about.
Yes.
Help people understand why the world is, and their life purpose, and all of that is really easy.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that next time.
Okay, sounds great. We're going to take a little bit of a break, but I do want to say Wolf Spirit Radio is by donation, so please stop by and give a donation if you like this conversation. And I will be back with Joseph Pierce, who wrote The Heart-Mind Matrix. We'll be back in just a few minutes.